Sometimes there isn't a better answer than that. You work with it. Be observant as to what's happening. Right? When you click a button or you do something, be observant. So we're going to go through, we're going to look at Z-spheres first. A couple things I want to point out with the Z-sphere build, and really kind of show you what an expectation would be for the build. Okay? There are some gray areas in the class, and people struggle with that because they struggle with, well, on this character you want me to do this, but on this character it's a different scenario. And that's why there's gray area. I might tell somebody, build that hood separate. I might tell somebody else, build that as one piece. It depends on the characters you have selected. So let's talk about character selection, right? Because I know you would have gotten into that through the first read and getting into the blockouts themselves. So one of the things you have to think about when selecting a character is, how is this going to fare each week? Okay, so I've got a couple different characters. This guy, he is more of a challenge character. He does have a back shot. He doesn't have a side image or anything, and he is standing in an irregular pose. So he would be somebody who might be like, okay, if I want to do that, I might choose one character like this, and then the rest would be maybe something with regular images or whatever you want to go with. But he answers all the needs from this point to the end of the month. He's got clothing and gear. He's got a full face and hair. Okay? So he hits all the markers. This guy, we talked about his images. He needs to be corrected a little bit. But again, he answers all the markers for the month. But I can't see his hair. Well, he's got hair. So think beyond the helmet. Okay, but we do also have an option for people that are like, well, I want to do this character, but they don't have hair, and I know we have to do hair at the end of the month. You can select one of our head busts. We have 4 supplied head busts, or use one of the ones in ZBrush to build a hairstyle for if one of your characters doesn't have hair. Okay, but most of the stuff you'll select will have hair. He doesn't really have a lot of clothing elements, right? When I say clothing, I mean cloth, right? Things with wrinkles and such. Hard surface models, getting into something with armor and everything, that's something I would be leery of. For week 1, almost anything you select for week 1 works. Okay? But going beyond week 1 is where you have to really start questioning. There's some characters I tell people, do not take this past week 1 because all it's wearing is a loincloth. What are you going to do next week when we're breaking the character into pieces and parts of the outfit? You really have nothing to do. Okay? That's not fair to everybody else that picks a character with lots of gear, right? And I was like, I found the loophole. No, I will grade. Simple characters get graded harshly because you have less things to really focus on, so everything better be on point. Right? Okay? So think about, how will this character work in week 2, week 3, and week 4. Again, most of them are fine for week 1. If you select your 6, they'll be great for week 1. We're just doing blockouts, proof of concept blockouts. Important that we understand proof of concept blockout, and you'll see what I'm talking about when I show you this guy. But again, will he be good for next week? This guy's great for next week. I think I've got one more. Another guy. Something like this would be okay, but he doesn't have a head. I'm not sure where he went. There is another. There he is. Okay, this guy. He's a good example for week 1 asset, but going into week 2, week 3, and week 4 is going to pose some problems. There's plenty of detail here. There's plenty of things to work on, but what is it missing?
Hair, face.
And, yeah, hair and face. We need those assets for week 4 assignments. Week 4 assignments, we're going to be resurfacing the face. Okay. Could we continue with this and cast a face for this character? Yes. But really look at the image and figure you're going to have to figure some things out, like how does this helmet come off of this character? Because you're going to, when you're modeling without the helmet, it's got to look right. So it's got to show the correct connection piece. So it's an attainable model. It's a good model. There's a lot of opportunity here. We can still work it into the system. I might block it out with the helmet, and then next week start cutting the helmet apart and then putting a head in there in week 2, and then refining the head in week 3. The helmet becomes almost a secondary thing. Possibly I can use that as a prop in week 3 or an accessory in week 3. So I can work this one, but it's going to take some thinking. It's going to take some extra care on my side to make sure that it hits what I need it to hit each week. Make sense? No? I can explain it over and over again until I get a good yes. Yes. There we go. All right. But again, most of them will work. I might actually, I'll run with him today. I think I've done him once, but I haven't done anything else. You know, I think the video covers me going over this guy. So, I'll go over him. And remember, there's things I have to be careful of. I already know. I'm aware of that. And every character you start working on, create yourself a doc file for it. Right? Things to watch out for, things to keep an eye on, things that are working, approaches, building your plans, stuff like that. All right. So yeah, he'll be good. Now, the next thing is, what do I actually block out? Right? I want to have an idea, and we do give you the example images. Right? There's a lot of examples that are up on FSO. There's a folder called examples. You download that and you can look at it. They're not all A's, but it's an example that kind of gets you the understanding of what is a proof of concept build. What should I be looking for? What should I not be looking for? The main thing I would tell you to always be considering is what is the character's main silhouette. If this character is wearing an outfit that makes up their body silhouette because you don't see their body, you match that. Okay, we're not playing dress up. We're not going to model a human form and then put clothing on top of it. That is a valid workflow, but you kind of know when you're doing that. This is more of let's make something look good. So you're going to build what you see. Secondary objects should be ignored. Okay, what would constitute a secondary object on him? His gear belt, this knife on the side, or whatever that is, right? The guns. But his pads and helmet, for a concept blockout, those are going to be something I'm probably going to target. Next week we'll break it into pieces and start separating and establishing those pieces. But for this week, I'm just looking to nail most of this character. So when I give it that squint test and I blur my eyes, it's still readable, and I can get a good feel of how this character sits in 3D. Yes?
Do you think it would be a better idea to maybe take the image into Photoshop and just black out the whole design and just have the same
Good question. Possibly. The only reason I would be leery of that, maybe you make 2 sets of images, you load one and you load the other. Right? The reason I would say possibly running that gamut is to be able to see, but the negative side of that is you won't be able to see any of the 3D shape. And really we're trying to target a good structure. Right? So if all I'm doing is focusing on the silhouette, am I going to create a good structure within that silhouette? Does that make sense? Almost like the 3/4 shots. But for a beginning, just to establish it might be a great way to go. You know, and then take that out, bring in the other image, so now you can start connecting the dots of, well, here's a bulge for the pad here, it lines up with this bulge, let me build in between. You know? So yeah, that's actually, no one's ever thought about that before. That'd be a pretty good idea to get started. So. All right, so I'm going to run all these match up. This is a very nicely done image plane. I'm really only concerned with this one, back and then front. It looks like it's almost identical left and right. So this will be good. And I prefer having images like that. They just work better for me. Okay, so that one's gonna be good. Let's go ahead and open up ZBrush. It's gonna be locked up. If you ever run into ZBrush locking up, what happens is when it quick saves while it's minimized, I know on my machine, and I ran into about 3 people last month that were having the same issue and they just kept restarting ZBrush. But if you minimize it and maximize it again, it usually unfreezes. But the trigger is the quick save. So if you don't want it to quick save in rest, you can go to your preferences. And you can go to quick saves, and you can say restoration. Let's crank that up to an hour, because if I walk away from my computer, I don't want it to be minimized and quick save and lock up my ZBrush. Sometimes it gets frustrating. Okay? You can also tell it how long to quick save in between you actually working. I think default is 20 minutes, and then at restoration is 1 minute. Okay? But here is the old ZBrush, and we're going to make sure that we get started correctly by situating a project file, right? You may have heard before saving out of ZBrush. You go over to Tool and Save As. This saves a ZTL, which is just a object. It's just a tool. It does not house any of your imagery or reference images, so that's something I would stay away from, unless you are building parts to the larger puzzle. Right? You want to build a belt buckle. You might save it out as a belt buckle ZTL. You want to export the, make a quick backup of your character. Save it as a ZTL. This is though where you would export OBJs to go back and forth between Maya and ZBrush if you wanted to. Right? But we're going to be focusing under File. Save as. Be careful with undo history. There's really not a need to save your undo history. Yeah, it just makes really large files. And you have to turn it on anyway. So we would save here. There is another place that people save, and I do not recommend. I've never needed to save this way, but last month again we had a couple people that were like, "Hey, I saved under here, document save, and now I can't do anything. My file, my model's gone." I'm like, "Yeah, because all you saved was your canvas. It does not save any of the model information. That is a .zbr file. Stay away from it unless somebody tells you why they need you to save a ZBR. Okay? But that does not contain any model information. So we're going to do file. Save that. It just saves your background. So if you're trying to save a document with a collage of back anatomy, you might want to save that and bring it up. So it's going to bring things like your document resolution in. It's going to bring up the image that was placed in the background. We'll bring that. But only a document. That's all it's saying. No models. No models. Or it'll flatten your model onto the document. And you'll just have your model sitting there. Okay, so getting started with this, I'll save it after I bring my images in. I like to kind of get those going. And I'm just going to place, since we're going to do Z-spheres, I'm going to go ahead and get that going first. So the simple tool, the big S, Z-sphere, go ahead and drop that down. And then we're going to click on edit. This is getting us started, right? So now you'll notice that when I click on that edit button, a lot of things light up, giving me more control. Okay, so now we have access to the floor planes. And we're going to be using, in the beginning, Z-grids. Right? Z-grids are going to allow me to use image planes inside of here. There is an image plane setup, but some people really like it, some people don't. I'm more of a fan of the Z-grids. I'm thinking about production time. And for later on, we will drop Z-grids and start using things like Spotlight or the image plane under texture. But Z-grids give us the closest thing to a Maya interface or the Maya workspace as we get. So I definitely prefer those. But we need to get them. So I'm going to go over to Draw, and you'll see this section here. This is the section we're going to be focused on to load our images in. But every time you click on a button, it collapses, so I'm going to drop it above the tool. Right, so you can dock and undock. Right, so we're going to go Draw, click, drag, and drop. And get it over there. Just so we can click on some buttons. Okay, so I'm gonna bring one in just really quickly and then show you some of the options. I'm gonna bring in the front and back. Let me make sure that we have everything there. And make sure that they are visible. If they're not visible, you'll notice that options disappear. So look right there, you see it's grayed out. The hotkey for this is what? Shift. It's kind of cool, it tells you right there. Yeah. If you want a little bit more information about things, just hold command while hovering.
Does it do that for tools as well?
Some.
Brushes?
Some stuff. Sometimes it's like, this is your brush palette. But it is a good link to get to some information. Okay? So I'm going to go into map 1, which will be my front image. You can turn texture off. So if you ever like, hey, I don't want to see those, just get rid of them. I'm going to go down to the bottom where it says import, and then we're going to locate that. Now it is just a real simple JPEG image. And we bring it in, and it's already perfectly lined up, right? Look at that, beautiful. No, we want to move this around. Do not move your asset, move the image. Okay, moving your asset breaks your symmetry. It sets you off on the wrong foot. We want to treat this like Maya, building at the origin, building center in our direction. So I'm going to go in here, horizontal and vertical offset. These are going to be my target sliders. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up and situate, and then I will look at some of these options up here. So we're going to go horizontal offset. Bring that over. I'm going to try and center as best as we can. Now you might have to play around with numbers. Okay? If you want to try and get it as good as possible. A millimeter could really make it great. Feels like that's still a little bit off. So we're going to bring up some numbers here. What was that? 1, 2, 6, 6. Okay, so it's going to be 1, 2, 4, possibly. 0.356. So if you got to take a little bit of time, and one thing you saw that when I click on there and it jumps really far, shoots out. Don't worry about that. You can adjust it, but you want to make sure that you're as right as rain as you can. If your images are keeping you from balancing the groin with the head, fix your image. Right? Photoshop, skew it, do all that kind of stuff. Okay? So we've got that loaded in. So let's look at some of the options. And again, a lot of this is reminiscent from the video, but can't hurt to go over it twice. All right, so the big things are going to be your fill mode. Right, so default is going to be fill mode 1. I like to hit front. Front allows me to screen door, screen the image. Sometimes you can go fill mode 3. I don't like the outside of that. The outside is kind of ghosted, not a fan. So fill mode 1, fill mode 2, and then putting it in front really works out. Okay, that one's okay. I could adjust it, but less adjusting. I'd rather adjust the Z-sphere up or down than have to worry about adjusting the image. Okay, so that's there. Let's go ahead and rotate to the side. Every time I rotate, holding shift, so I snap. Now, it's not hold shift and then try and rotate, right? It's rotate, then hit shift while you're rotating. It takes a little bit to get used to, but that's how you're going to snap into your orthos. The other thing in the beginning, take off perspective. If you are running perspective on your cameras, your stuff will not line up until you can snap things to grid, but we're going to try and keep it exactly the way the defaults are. So in the beginning, perspective off. Later on, when you start working on higher end shapes, we turn perspective on because it's going to give us a more accurate viewpoint of the model. Okay, so let's go to the side. Let's go down to left and right. Map 1 or map 2, you know, I'll just go to map 1 out of the gate. I don't want to load that same image in. Okay, we're going to go horizontal offset. We're going to place it however we need. If you only have one, this is a great image because it gives us left and right. They are identical for the most part. But if you don't like it, just hit the flip button. Right, it will adjust and flip the image. So that's how we do it. In this case, it doesn't really matter. It's not doing anything special for us. I'm going to go and bring that over and just try and center that line, that grid line, through the body, through the spine. Okay? And that is good. And then if you want to bring in the back image, this is where it gets a little more powerful. I'm going to go back to front and back. I'm going to load map 2. And front and back. You guessed it. Map 2 is back. And we're going to go in there, bring in the same thing. Okay. And we're going to line it up. And again, what makes these really cool is the side, the back, the front. Back, front. So it automatically switches whether you're looking at the asset from the front or from the back. It'll switch that image forward, which is awesome. That's an automated. Okay, so at this point, I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to lose any of this. I don't want it crashing on me or whatever. So I'm just going to go File, Save As, and we'll just put this in here. We'll call it Asset 1. Whatever the build is, I'm going to do this in Z-Sphere, so. ZPR, and save. All right, now my images will load anytime I want. And don't worry about that, it's just over here. Right? Images are good. And I can save into that, and I would hit, when I hit a marker, and I don't want to redo that marker, I tend to save version 2. Or if it's a milestone, like Z-Sphere's placement will be scene 1. Z-Sphere placement to adaptive skin will be version 2, and then Z-Spheres to subdivision shaping, file 3. So I try not to overwrite the same file all the time, because if it corrupts, it gotta work. Okay? So now we're going to go in here, and I'm done with the images, so I'm going to go ahead and undock that. Just gotta get rid of it. Just clicking on the little button. Now we're ready to work. So symmetry is going to be important, the X key. And I'm going to go and activate move, right? So I can just kind of position this sphere up a little bit. Now, if you have symmetry turned on and everything's lined up, you should be able to drag the sphere up and down from the center, and it's not going to hurt anything. Okay, and we're going to switch to scale. So you're going to have Q, W, E, R, just similar to Maya, for move, rotate, and scale, and draw. So draw, move, scale, rotate. Okay, so I'm going to scale this down. As far as what direction, what color is pointing upward, I've really tried to look into this, and I keep just finding it doesn't really matter. As long as if you pick a direction, you go that direction. I did find a write-up where they were kind of hinting to the darker side being the up, the Y for the Z-sphere, but you know, I've seen people doing the other way. What you do want to think about is expansion. Like, how are you taking it from this one root and building from that? So that's why I start in the core and work from it. If I were going to rig, I would rig the same way. I would rig at the cog, the center of gravity, and work my way out from that center of gravity. So that's why I'm going to target here. And as far as the scaling of the actual Z-sphere, you know, it's kind of, you got to take one over the other. Because no matter what, this is going to be a spherical, or sorry, a cylindrical shape. It's just what's going to happen. So I either target the width of the character or the width from the side, or or depth, I guess we call it depth, and then width from the front on the character to just kind of pick. I favor the front images from the middle. Let's switch to draw and start placing them. Again, symmetry is on. When we get to the top, it's green. That lets me know that I'm going to draw upward. Now, where should I target placing Z-spheres? Everywhere he bends, joints, yeah. Where else might I target? Size differences. So if we change mass, I can compensate for some of that change with a Z-sphere. I'm not wanting anybody to go too crazy with Z-spheres. I see people with like 5 Z-spheres from the knee down to the ankle. That's too much. It's going to overcomplicate. That's when we start getting the crashing happening. But I want to look for large size changes and bend points, joints, anatomical structures, things like that. I can also use Z-spheres to establish appendages, horns, long ears, tails. So part of the process of picking a build style is, what are my needs of the model? So if this character had horns, if this character had a tail, it might be easier to start with Z-spheres because you can plot Z-spheres out and at least get a starting structure that way. Z-spheres are great for posing. They're great for, hey, I want to sculpt something. That's another thing. Purpose dictates process. I get this question a lot. I really want to model this character, but I know they're going to be in this pose. Should I model them in a pose and then bend them and put them into the pose that I want them in, or should I just start in the pose? If we were going to go print, or if I knew that's all I wanted was that pose, I'd probably block them out symmetrically. But once I got to the main, the block out, I would put them in a pose, because what happens is people model like this and then they try and get all these poses and they find that they have to re-sculpt anatomy and wrinkle information, because just taking your arm and turning it changes all your form anatomy and the bicep. So if you take your character and you're now like this, all your wrinkles, you set up your wrinkles to sit like this, now you're like that, your tension points change, the anatomy is elongated, the position of your shoulder is different. You're going to be correcting the model. And if you know that it's never going to animate, you know you just want something that looks cool, think about it in your process. We're going A pose or T pose all the way, so it's not something to worry about, but it is something you might think about as well. Oh, great question. If I were going to rig it, because I don't know much about rigging, I'd probably go A pose because I have less correction to do in the shoulders. One of the problems is rigging like this, and then again, we talked about this, right? How the pen. As soon as I go like this, you think about what's happening with the anatomy. The scapulas are relaxing and sliding outward. The shoulders are dropping, and the clavicles are dropping. But what makes this something that some riggers like is icon placement. So, icon placement. So if I'm like this, straight palm out, I can place an icon here, freeze transforms, and its orientation is X, Y, Z based on the orientation of the icon. Mm-hmm. If I'm like this, and I freeze transform, what happens to my icon orientation? It now is locked at an angle, but my X, Y, Z are now set flat. So to move the arm up, I gotta go up, in, instead of just moving with the arm. Some riggers care, some don't. Some probably have fixes for that. Again, speak to a certain level of the world. But you'll get riggers that say I want palms forward. Some will say I want palms down. Some will say, bent knees. Some will say straight. Some will say A pose, T pose. You just gotta have that conversation with them, obviously, so you can figure out where you do it. That's a great question, right? That's that whole, what do I know? What do I need? What do I have?
I know you were saying a little bit ago about trying not to have so many of the legs and the body Z-spheres.
Yeah.
What about fingers?
For fingers, well, I mean, you think it's an arm, but on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
So for a finger, if you're going to go all fingers, right? Acceptable hands for week 1, no matter what the build is, at least have to be, the mitten hand, claw hand kind of thing. It's got to be at least this, because you can get a good read on the shape of a hand with that setup. You don't have to have all fingers. With Z-spheres, it's kind of so easy to generate that shape. Just go in there and drop in some fingers. But again, think about it. If I'm going to run with this character, should I establish the fingers now, or am I okay with lopping the hand off and rebuilding the hand later on in the month? But we want at least the claw. So,
How do you, like, in that figure, how many Z spheres do you think it would be?
well, just like rigging, you've got the start, right? So every joint, 1, 2, 3. But then in rigging, we always give an end joint, right? The end joint tells this joint, when I'm rigging, it gives it a target to point at. So if I'm doing an actual finger, I will follow the same practices I would in rigging. I would place a wrist, a palm, and then I would put my first knuckle, second knuckle, third knuckle, and an end for the tip of the finger. So, good question. Because then you can pose, you can get it all situated. Are you stuck in the mud if you don't do that? No. You can definitely work that out as long as you at least have the section of the finger accounted for, right? If you want to do independent fingers. But what's acceptable? At least this. Is this acceptable? No. So if your models have that, you might model it to that point and then take a picture of your hand or sketch in a new one and have yourself at least get that on. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go in here and just place some spheres. Z-spheres are so easy to use and fast to place that if something happens, I really recommend you don't troubleshoot it. I can tell you 9 out of 10 times it's an extra Z-sphere somewhere that you double tap by accident. Right? You hit the A button for adaptive skin, it crashes. But for the most part, you can spend 30 minutes trying to find that Z-sphere or another 10 minutes redrawing your Z-sphere structure. This would be also one of the only times I would recommend using a mouse versus a tablet until you get familiar with them, because you're less likely to double tap. Okay? And it's not a zombie we're after, it's a Z-sphere. So double tap is a bad idea. All right, so I'm going to go in here and draw, and I'm going to keep him pretty simple. I'm just going to go ahead and place one, and another one. And as far as your movement or placement, some people prefer to drop one in here and then here and pull it all the way down and then add the ones in between. Other people will choose to drop in the pre-count, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then whatever. I'd probably do the hands once the whole line was established. So let's say once you do it, then just go draw, and then draw 4 spheres and then position them and move them. That's going to be kind of up to you as far as what build style you like. Maybe try them both out after learning how to work with these spheres. How do I get rid of a Z-sphere? If I place one and I don't like it, how do I get rid of it? It's part of it. There's one part that's going to make that work. There's a button on your keyboard that inverts all brushes. So, option. You guys are in you're in the right zone, which is good. Option allows you to invert the brush. So since we're in draw mode, if I hit option, I click on a Z-sphere, it will delete. Oh. Okay, so now if you want to draw one in, just make sure you're in draw mode and click, and just like a regular brush, it does what it's supposed to do. Again, remove it, alter, option. Okay? Now, unfortunately, that's just what we do. You can be upset, and we'll just move it. The scale is down a little bit. I think once I have the hips in there. Now, you can see, hotkeys are great, but I do also recommend knowing where things are, right? Knowing where things are so you can just click. If I'm doing this, and I'm talking and my hand isn't close to one of my hotkeys, I'm just going to click on the button, right? So, know where things are so you can that, and we will scale. So I'm just hitting the M key. That should be good. I'm going to go back to draw. Symmetry is on. So I'm going to do this slightly different just to show you. The shoulder. Switch the movement. all the way down. Okay, and then I'm gonna have a clicking, so Q for draw, clicking the arm. Now, I don't stand like this. So I don't want my character to stand like that. I know, that's the new way, you know? This was always a thing for animators. I'm like, why is your character in that pose? Oh, because they're doing a kick. I go, you stand in that pose and tell me what happens. And they stand in that pose and they fall over. I go, see, the balance is off. Right? So you're asking your character to do something that is not natural, which will cause concern by the audience. I'm going to go ahead and set these back where they should. I'm going to put a slight bend in the arm. And his arms are most likely bent. I don't really get a clear shot there because they actually took the arm off. But that's going to give me a nice bent position. Right. And then we switch back to draw. Just going to go palm, more, down, knuckles. Right? And then if you want to go ahead and throw in a thumb, okay, there should be enough geometry to kind of fake a thumb pull from this structure, but if you're worried about it, it is better to have that appendage established in the center. The thumb does start back here at the wrist. If you want to throw in another one that acts more like the palm or wrist connection, you can give that a shot. Yes. Mitten hands have to be there. Hands really don't have to be established with fingers and fingernails until week 3, right? Because that's when you have your 2 that you really want. You're going to have good hands on them at that point. Or you put good hands on them in week 3. Week 2, we still want the paddle line. Week 1, we want the paddle hand that has good shape, right? Just hitting the A key and going, there's my hand, that doesn't do it. Right? You got to shape it. Put the palm shape in, give it a little bit of structure, make it feel like a hand that is in the mitten. Not one of the big puffy mitts. Nice form fit. Okay? Okay? So I did hit the A key. Please hit the A key time to time to make sure you don't have any surprises, right? Hit the A key and then poof, there goes ZBrush. That does happen. It happens to me. It's happened to me during demonstrations. It is something that will happen. Okay. So hit the A key, and then possibly if you find that you are running into that problem a lot, save frequently as you're going through. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and place in one extra one. Let me make my brush a little smaller. I like to run with a small brush. Now, if you move it and you start to notice you get stuff like that where it hazes out, that's a problem. See how the arm kind of disappeared? You want to avoid any of that. So you might be like, I need that size of that Z-sphere, or I need the position. But guess what? You're breaking the Z-spheres by doing that. You're running the risk of a crash. You're running the risk of it shutting down ZBrush. So I would try and avoid those at all costs. And then we're going to go draw, and I'm going to go ahead and draw ready. And then just to test it. Still working? Good. All right, now it is converting automatically to Dynamesh. Right? I will tell you, and I believe I mentioned this in the one video, how to turn that off, because your Z-sphere build, the required Z-sphere build, has to be Z-sphere topology from start to finish. Okay, so in that one you'll be working with subdivisions instead of up-resing Dynamesh. But they found that it's a real good workflow to go from Z-sphere to Dynamesh, because it's usually what we need. We're trying to figure out volumes. You'll find that working with the Z-sphere, if you don't have the geometry accounted for or enough, you're going to have a hard time getting certain shape. You can't just push a button and get more geometry. Actually could have, because you just turn on, but in the explanation, we're gonna send it in. Alright, so you are gonna fight through one model, 100% Z-sphere topology. So to make sure we're looking at that, I'm gonna go to the adaptive skin. This only shows up when you have Z-spheres on your screen. And we're gonna go to Dynamesh resolution, and we're gonna turn that to 0. This turns Dynamesh off. And you can see the difference. I'm gonna go Shift P and turn off my image planes here, my Z-grids. I'm not turning them off, I'm just hiding the floor planes. And then you'll notice here if I do a preview, you see how faceted my lines are. But if I have a Dynamesh resolution, this is how we always catch people. You can see that the Dynamesh is now trying to conform to the faceted shape topology. So it looks like a softened model. We want that for the Z-sphere specific build, we want that to be right up this topology. You can see we're getting some pretty harsh star junctions, but we'll put some of those like we continue. All right, so Shift P, bringing back my image planes. I'm going to go ahead and situate the helmet. So I'm going to drop in one for the neck, one for the helmet. Okay. And another conception that people have with Z-spheres is, you know, they try and get the Z-spheres to give them the shapes. And unfortunately, it doesn't really work all that well. You know, this helmet is kind of oval in shape. Right? It's an ellipse, and I'm not going to be able to scale the Z-sphere to fit that. So my Z-sphere might look weird until I start shaping that type of surface. Now, let's look at an alternative style of build here, because if I'm not really putting the neck in, and it's just one appendage, do I need 2 Z-spheres? Could I get away with one? Could. I could, yeah. Let's go in there. Oops. Let's undo that. Let's undo that. Undo that. Undo that, let's just work with the one. Bring it up, scale it. Ready to move. So the O key. That's going to give me geometry that matches the shape to now, on a normal human, I would probably put in a geometry, you know, the 2 spheres, or sometimes you can do a sphere for the neck, so from the clavicles and the trapezius to the base of the skull, and then you put one for the bottom of the head, one for the top of the head, so you make it 3. This guy I think is going to function pretty nicely where he is. And then we're going to go in and draw the hip, knee, ankle. What's nice about this model, it doesn't have really any large shape changes, so I'm kind of okay. I'm just keeping my Z-spheres very simple. And we'll go ahead and scale them up a little bit. A little bit more. Now, actually, from the side, I do see a need for possibly making a front. I'm going to drop one in there. He's got these boots on. And that way, really scale up that and get that wider line. Reset and then the A key, make sure we're not crashing anything. Good. And then we're going to go draw again. Key. Target. Now we've got the Z-sphere situated. I'm gonna hit the A key just to double check. Good. So I'm going to go back in, save as, Z-sphere 1. I've got my two versions. One is the image plane and the start, and this is the Z-sphere structure. It's testing and it's working. So we're about ready to call it done, right? Not at all. This is the first part of the process. There is a lot more shaping that needs to happen. This is not a proof of concept. This could be considered in some production pipelines a blockout. It does give us the proportions. It gives us some of the major volumes. It gives us the anatomy landmarks as far as like where the joint placements would be. The scale is all situated, but this is far from done for a proof of concept, right? Proof of concept build. So let's go ahead and take it further. So the next thing we want to do is actually make it sculptable topology. Do not sculpt on the adaptive skin. You have a tendency where you could lose information. So what I'm going to do is just unpreview and then turn preview off. And we're going to go density. I'm going to turn it to 4. This will give me a good starting base. Anybody know what that slider does? Okay, what it does is it builds subdivision levels. So let's look at this at subdivision 1. That's subdivision 1. That is your raw information. I love the evolution pictures of Laura Croft from games to get back in PlayStation 1 days. Right, so that's number 1. 2 is a little bit more geometry, right? And then 3 is more, and so on and so forth. But what's really happening is it's giving you level 1, 2, and 3 if you were to create your skin at this resolution. If I go to 4, though, this gives me a pretty good one. This will give me some geometry to shape. I also have my low-res geometry to do some larger moves on. And then I've got a good amount to start establishing some shape. Less is more in this phase. I love it when people go, oh yeah, I got 1.5 million and I'm doing a walkout. I'm having a real hard time making it look smooth. Because you've got 1.5 million in there. You don't need 1.5 million. There is no need for any of these models to be over a couple 100,000. Right? That's really getting into the I'm not effectively or efficiently using topology. It's just too much out of the gate. You want to have enough to get shape, but you don't want to do overkill. So we're going to go with 4. That's going to be good. I'm going to hit Make Adaptive Skin. If you're running into crashing and you just can't bring yourself to redrawing your structure to where it works well. And you're like, I've got to move forward. I've got one more character to do. The deadline's in 4 hours. What am I going to do? Switch to use classic skin. This thing, it doesn't look good. Let's go ahead and look at it. The algorithm used to calculate the skin is not the best, but what is awesome about it? It works. It's like a tank. It'll eat through some problem Z-sphere issues. It'll just be like, I don't care. Here's your geometry. Now what can you do? Sculpt. You can finish the model. You're not sitting there going, well, my Z-spheres don't work. I'm going to throw my hands up and say I'm done. No, you can shape that. It's going to take longer to shape it because you're not getting a cleaner structure out of the gate, but you move forward. And that's the name of the game in production. Always moving forward, making progression, no matter what. So, for the most part, though, if you've done your clean Z-sphere structure, you haven't overcomplicated it, regular adaptive skin should work fine. So I'm going to go ahead and make adaptive skin. Pay attention to what happens up here when I click that button. It gives me a skin and my original Z-sphere. So if I ever need to be very careful with what I say here. If I ever need to reevaluate and adjust my Z-sphere for this asset, I can and then reskin it. I do not want this to be mistaken with, well, I'm just going to go ahead and reorder these, and now I got my 6th character. Yay! I didn't have to work. No. Again, if I catch stuff like that, you're going to do things really hard, and you're going to get a bunch of 0 for week 1, which terminates a lot of your grade. And the reason I say this is I see it. There's going to be different needs for your characters. You're gonna have different Z-sphere layouts. Just make that happen, right? Don't reuse. And you wanna learn, right? So by going through the process 4 or 5 times, it kind of reiterates that. Can you imagine if it was like, here's how you tie your shoes, and you're like, okay, and you only did it once and never again? Nobody would know how to tie their shoes, right? You do it over and over again. Helps us out. All right, so we've got our original Z-sphere. We now have our skin, Z-sphere skin. There it is. And if we go under geometry, you'll see that we have those 4 subdivisions built. There's one. I would use this for, if there was a twist or something weird in the Z-sphere layout, in the original, you can go around, and for my Maya vert wranglers out there that really just love working with vertices, well, in a Maya model, I'm going to situate certain things to contour. My edges will follow shapes. So if you wanted to kind of prep this a little bit by saying, you know what, he's going to have lats, you know, and this geometry is really not built for lats, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to move. BMV is the hotkey string for the move brush. If I make my brush really small, I can come in here and start situating. Shift F will show you your wireframe, or you can click on the button down here. You can start, and you know what, I'm going to situate this a little bit. Let's have this flow a little bit nicer in the back of the arm. I can push these in. So now I'm literally at a vert to vert positioning opportunity. Right? I can just old school now. Right? So now when we go to the front, you can see the lats coming up at the back, and I can say, you know what, it's going to have a rib cage. Let's go ahead and situate that. If I can make it a little bit and all of this will transition into all transition really nicely into the other resolution. All right, so that's one option. That's one of the good things about lower resolutions, is you can start arcing your topology if you see the need for it. If you go up a division, I can get more. But it's always going to show you that base level geometry. Right? That's really what you're going to see. So moving vertices becomes a little more difficult because it's hard to actually hit this. But you can. You still see all that. For the most part, though, most of us will jump right into the move brush. The move brush will take care of the majority of my first level shaping. Let's see people that. I'm going to pull the shoulder out and they try and sculpt it in and try and move it by sculpting it. And that's just not a good way to go because it's more strokes. Treat it like clay. The first time I was trained by a professional sculptor, I was sitting on working on some pants for this guy. He's in the case actually in the other building, the guy holding the camera. And he saw me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like trying to get wrinkles in the pants. And he rips it out of my hand and just like slaps clay on it and just gets the shape and he goes, "There, now it's established. Now you can start worrying about the higher end stuff." And I was afraid to be rough with the material. And here, it's the same kind of thing. People think this little tiny, be a little aggressive in the beginning, just like you would clay. Move it, work with it, keep progressing forward, and you'll see that the, starts to fall into place. So we'll go somewhere around 2 or 3. Let's go 2 in the beginning. And if you want the hotkeys for this, D goes up in resolution. So if we're on here, Shift D goes down, D goes up. I'm always restricted within my level. So if I hit D now, nothing happens. I would need another subdivision level, which would be either click to divide or what's the hotkey? Control D. That gives me a new subdivision level. But what do I have to be careful with? He's already at 55,000. One more subdivision level will take him to what? It's 4 times 5. You get 250,000 polygons. Okay. If I hit it one more time, and I go 6 subdivision levels, what do I do? Okay, so that's where you have to be careful. You're like, control it, and then there's 7 subdivisions on there, and they wonder why they're at 3 million polygons. Be careful with that, right? So we're gonna stay right around where we're at. I'll jump back and forth, Shift D, let's go down to 2, and kind of start hitting some major shapes. So the biggest thing here is making sure my brush is big enough to get me the shapes I need. So let's go in here and start. I'm gonna take off my wireframe, Shift F, so we're just in shape. Make my brush over there. You will notice that at certain points, I start to maneuver geometry that I may not want to be maneuvering. I'm going to ignore it for now, but it's something I want to be mindful of. I can see through this holster. I'll be moving my camera around other than up and down. No. Again, this is another thing in Maya. I do the same thing. I'll work in the front view for a while, and then I'll switch to the side view. It just, I can focus a little better, and it's got it that I need to from this view. And sometimes you move your camera with the pressure. And then I'm always hitting shift to make sure that I'm locked into this view. My brush a little smaller. And control. Now, another way to move is by using the Alt and Option. What this does is gives you like an inflation type move. So I'm going to go into the hand there. Push that in. Make my brush a little smaller. You notice I hold Alt. Okay. Now, we're going to have to work with that. Okay? Now, what do we know about a hand? Right? We know that one that's wrong. You just look and you go, okay. So, okay. I'm okay with some changes. You know, you'll find that if something is done right, this is if something's done right, it'll look right. Right? So if you shape the hand out and you did it correctly, even though it's a little bit off, it'll look right. It'll Okay, so I know that a hand is gonna be a little bit wider here. I'm gonna take her in, and we're gonna have the roll for the fingers, and we're gonna have the roll for the palm. That's stuff that I'm gonna put in. Okay. Okay, and now we're gonna do the same thing now from the side. So let's make our brush a little bigger because we're making larger changes. I'll start targeting some of these fine changes in a little bit. And always macro to micro, large to small. You can see the lines. If I want to sculpt that more effectively, I want my geometry to follow some of this stuff. So I might take a little bit of time and say, you know what, this instead of going like that and fighting the shape, maybe I need to have this geometry more in line with the shape. Maybe more this angle. Too much and it's going to hurt it. It's going to hurt the ability to get other types of forms, but it's always something that's on my mind. Should my geometry fit the shape better? I'm going to leave it where it is and see if it starts giving me a problem because I have this lower res topology. I can fix that a little bit further down the line if needed. Okay, let's go ahead and when you see your geometry starting to tear, which is when the geometry starts to, another term you'll hear is kiting. Right? The geometry begins to look like a kite. It looks like no longer like a square or a rectangle. It starts to get elongated and starts to tear. That's what's going on back here. Some of the answer there is more geometry, but we're not at that stage yet. I don't really want to think like that yet. So, one subdivision away from a little bit more geometry. Again, understanding anatomy, you understand where the quad is affecting the leg, where the hamstrings will be affecting, where the glutes will be pulling out and giving more of that shape. Use alt here to this in a little bit. Back. I haven't done much smoothing. I actually just smoothed a little bit there. Okay. Shift P, I like to look at the model a little bit, see how it's starting to work out. Now, I've been working with front and side. So what you'll start to notice is we get these peaks. See that right there, that nice bright line? That's because I've only pulled it from the front. And you'll see the same thing on the side sometimes. Once I establish that good front and side, I can start building up based off of the reference, start building and connecting from front and side. This is where I think if you were going with the kind of blocked out reference, where you want to switch, because now you're moving into creating more of the in-between shape, the three-quarter shape. And you need to see the reference for that. Alright, so here, I'm going to just pull a little bit. Look at it from different angles, always important. You'll see the model from different angles so you can check out, make sure that you're actually rounding in the front, right? At the back, flattens out as you can feel the scapulas, right? Stand, kind of get your shoulders back, scapula, and you press backwards. They turn out pretty decent, okay? But again, this is just a rough in version. We got to keep on going with them. So now we go up. Higher resolution, and I like to put, when I'm learning, right, I'm learning something, the dirt bike story, right, I bought a CR250R from a friend of mine. If you know anything about dirt bikes, it's an old two-stroke race bike, crazy bike. I had no business being on that bike, because I haven't been in the woods in many years, and I was like, sure, bring it here, and took off down the thing. Next thing you know, the bike's up a tree, and I'm on the ground. That bike is so fast and so much torque. Jumped on it and went, right? I should have taken the bike and run around the parking lot a little bit, taken it really easy, slow, learn the bike, how much power, what happens when you pop the throttle a little bit, or you ease into it, what's first gear feel like, second gear, right? Where's the kill switch on it? Because it's a little lower than what I was used to on my other bike. So these are things you gotta get familiar with, what you can and cannot do. So don't go crazy, work with what you got. Get something that looks nice. I think he's starting to feel decent compared to the reference. But now, the next phase at this level will work even better because I've already kind of worked as much as I could in the previous resolution. Now I've got a little bit more to work with, and I can do a little bit more. So now we can go in here. We can say, okay, let's bring back our reference. And I might, at this point, start utilizing sculpture brushes. So I'm going to go and play build up or standard. You know, there's a lot of stuff in there, a ton of stuff in there that is really confusing and sometimes upsetting. I would tell you keep it to play build up, inflate, standard brush, maybe dam standard, and the move brush. And that would be where I'd tell you to focus in on in the beginning. You know, definitely this week. There are some other brushes that work like Trim Dynamics. Some people really like this. It is a little bit more of an advanced brush. It works by kind of flattening off, you know, so if you've ever done whittling with a little pocket knife and a piece of wood, it's kind of like that. You can start shaving down the model. Some people really like that brush. You know, people might have been going, well, how would you flatten off the feet? This is a great brush. It should go on the bottom of the feet. It does take more topology. You can only do what you can. If I go to the bottom of the feet, I can start. I can start flattening them off. Yes. If it is, great question. This, I would expect that separation between the upper part of the boot and that to be walked in. Now, does it have to be super refined? You know, no, it's got to look good, or it should look good, but you know, we'll start getting into that process. Okay, so I'm going to go into here, and you know, I'm just going to keep it exactly the way it is. So if you're kind of curious as how the brushes work, you've got the characteristics of the brush itself, how it's being applied. Is it doing dots? Is it doing drag project? Are we doing color spray, which is kind of like a spray can? Just got to sprays that brush around. Right? And then you've got alpha. where is it actually, right? If you've ever done spray cans and you cut out a design in a piece of cardboard, you use it, you spray or you mask off an area, right? The alpha tells the brush where to work and where not to work. So the defaults are usually fine in the beginning, and later on you can start to manipulate some of that information. But what I'm going to do here is just I'm going to hold Alt. That's going to invert the brush. Allow me to push in a little bit, and I'm going to pull out with respect to my feeding apparatus. Push in underneath the component. Now that the shape is there, I'm going to go back to the move tool. Those shoulder pads, and these shoulder pads do not line up front and side. There's really not much we can do with that. But I'm going to pick one and try and keep to that if that's possible. So switch to the both again. You can see that this will allow me to move tool kind of bridge a little bit stronger silhouette. Sometimes I'll go in, this is going to be hard to get at this resolution, so I don't know how much I'll fight it. I might just try and comply a little bit. And now, you can kind of see in there, you can see the back there. Okay. I'm just being very gentle with it. Okay, kind of start getting a little bit of a raise. Pant legs. Something like this, I might switch to inflate. Inflate a little bit. Switch a little smaller. Notice when I smooth, I'm being gentle because this geometry is not a lot going on there. So if I smooth too much, it literally obliterates. So is it? Tell me there's no one in here that's using a mouse still. Only for ears, placing your ears. When you get into sculpture, awesome, I like that. Let's do it. Slow down a little bit. Squeezing to help in that leg line. You see I'm ignoring these straps. Just going EMB and bring up my move tool. switch. Bring that out to the side. Smooth. It's gonna help. Glide a little bit more. Take a look. Smoothing out. Bring it out a bit more. Maybe investigate what this is. Okay, and I go up my next level. Now I can really, probably get these in. It's going to be a little tough again with the topology here, but I get a good feel for them, right? They're starting to take shape. Just kind of smoothing out some things. And anytime I smooth something out, right, this is another thing I notice newer modelers not doing, is they'll go and they'll sculpt in an area and they forget to go back and double check their silhouettes. Right? This is how you start getting what we call off character. You start fading away from the reference images and it falls apart because you're not on character anymore. And it's exactly that. Again, watching people, they'll sculpt and they don't. I just did a pretty good smoothing over there. Maybe it pulled too much of the pant leg away. And you can see the hands, the cuff here. So let's look at some other tricks. If I want to accentuate a zone, we're going to look at masking. Masking is very powerful. Basically, if you're not sure what it is, I'm going to hold control. You see my icon changes color. I now enter the mask brush. Okay? And now, if I sculpt, nothing happens in the mask area. Okay? So some of these details, if I don't want to hand sculpt them all the time, let's go and kind of take care of this. Let's make that I'm going to go ahead and mask. I'm going to go control. This is one piece of this. Okay, so you mask whatever you want. So now if I'm moving, think about practicality, how are you going to use this? If I want to move the arm, but I keep accidentally moving the torso, mask one of them off. Right? That way you won't affect it. So if I want to clear a mask, or let's invert a mask first. What do you think the invert button would do? Option. Exactly. It's always, that always inverts stuff. So if I hold Option and I click in space, sorry, I just Control click in space. If I want to unmask, Control and Option, and I can out of mask. Right? If you want to clear a mask, Control click drag in space. I'm just going to go ahead and clear it. Oops, I made a mistake. Let's undo. Control click in space will invert. And again, if I want to touch up my mask, Control Option, and I can pin right here. It looks like it's a little bit, so I want to touch up that mask a little bit more, a little higher. I can do that. That's like a pin out the mask. Pin out. Okay, but really what I want to use these for is I'm going to go ahead and invert. And there's another thing for beginners that I think is a great tab to kind of mess around with, and it's the deformation tab under the tool column. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to look at inflate. Put those up a little bit. Now, if I get off character, I can adjust that. Let's take a look. It really helped me identify that. Now I can go in there and I can grab my move tool, smooth it out, don't smooth too much. And we are going to be limited with the topology, but if I'm looking for a quick, a sleeve or the hand, I want to bring the hand down a little bit. I can utilize that to get the shape. So let's go back to Shift P, make sure we're snapped flat, grab the move tool, got it, love it. Let's make the brush a little bit bigger, and come back in here, push that back into place. Going back to there. Now things for like the arm, I want to deflate. That's another good use for the inflate brush is to deflate something. I make my brush a little bit larger, Alt, I can deflate all the way around that arm, and that's going to shrink up the wrist. Right? So now we get the forearm to wrist shape. Okay, so inflating is great. You can think maybe down here for some of the boot shape, right? I can maybe mask off this area and either inflate or deflate it to kind of get that going instead of trying to sculpt it in. That'd be one of those options. So let's go in here and I'm going to actually mask off this hand. I'm going to go control and I'm going to drag to right about there. Okay. And then I'm going to switch my brush size. And give us a little bit more of a refinement. See back here, I'm going to unmask a little bit. Okay, I'm going to invert that. I'm going to deflate the hand a little bit. Clear my mask, Shift P to hide the hand. Okay, so now we're starting to get this to a proof of concept lockout. Okay, go ahead, I've done some work, I want to go and save as 2. Okay, and, if we look at this, I'm starting to gather the feel of that. I'm not going to refine everything, but I want it to feel like that. I should be able to blur and not see all the details, but see the posture, the volume, the forms that are present there. Okay, that's it there. Okay. I'll show you another one just to kind of look at targets. It changes view. So here's just another one to look at, where this one's going. Minus the sash, we're not going to the sash. Here's this character. Okay, has a stance, starting to target some of the shapes, not really refining them, but targeting them. So I have, when you do something like this, it's sometimes just to give yourself a little landmark. Just give yourself a little thing that you can now shape and measure and get to where it needs to go. Right? It's kind of one of those things, because I can look at this now, Shift P, and then go to my reference and go, that's not on target at all. BMB, brush a little bigger, and start pulling that up to hit the shape. So That's why I like, I'm a fan of proof of concept sculpts because they really allow you to see, what the model is gonna look like. Do you wanna invest more time in it? Is it something that, what are the minds with it? So, but, I like having those things. Now, I'm not doing anything hanging off his loincloth. You could try and establish that, but really there's enough on him. I'm not doing his big shoulder plate that's on the one side that's asymmetrical, would be considered a secondary piece. So if you're ever wondering, do I go further, do I not, then I would tell you, shoot me an email, point to what it is that you have a question on and ask me. Is this something that I should consider in my block out or not, or, ask the questions. You would do that on the job, you'd be asking your art directors and your team leads, so you don't make a mistake, it'd be the same thing, okay? So hopefully that gets you a little bit more familiar with targeting, what you should be targeting and where you should be going with it. I do want to now take a second and look at the capsule that was given. But I just kill the screen for just a second. Even though, I never thought that you should still see it right on the, I just might have some what's going on here, so I did kill the screen share.
I think it's zip.
Zip. Zip. Probably, I'm sure they do have the link. Down here. Thank you. Shareable link is a great way to go, because when you're dealing with Google Drive, you do run into the, or you get email. And the email that I use for my Google Drive is different than the full site one. It's NeedStarCell M, which can be found under the people section. So if you click on my name, you'll see things like office hours and contact information. Okay, so let's go ahead and show the screen again. There we go. Webcam's still running. Awesome. Let's go recording. Let's do. Now, if a file does not open and you get that error, and it's a very scary error which says cannot find or locate file, or just cannot open the file. One of the better ways, surefire way, is to go file and open it this way. So if the file one opens through double clicking, try it through file open. Open ZBrush and then open. Okay, I was going to say something about it.
Yeah, just, no, it's
Let
not.
me go ahead and fire this up here. So the first thing I noticed is the fingers are all jacked up.
They are.
Now, this does bring up a good point, right? When you're wanting a critique, if there's something you don't want mentioned because put it in the email. I haven't really touched the feet. I don't know. I'm just giving this for if I'm not here, right? You see, I haven't really touched the feet. I was wondering how the torso is looking, or whatever. You can kind of steer people to look at what you want them to look at. It's real frustrating. Like, I know that. I know that. Well, I didn't know you knew that already. I'm just giving you some information. All right, so let's take a look at Renegade. His name is not Renegade, but
I call them Discount Wolverine.
Discount Wolverine. Nice. Okay. Let's see. Always I'm going to tell you, make sure that you're thinking about, I know we don't want to go too much shape in the face, but we want to kind of have that basic structure in there. So it's better for next week if you can, especially with him, he has hair. So I'm ignoring the hair, right? There's no need to be trying to put hair in there. I'm just going to target a bit. The next thing is, make sure that we are on. Looks like you're doing pretty good. There's only a couple places that are on. For things like trapezius, think about, the good thing is that this is what's really nice is there's stuff I can't see here. So that gives me some freedom to pull shape, and we go ahead and just pull out the trapezes on here. Because we should have sternocleidomastoids come up and connect, but there should be a structure here, and we're kind of pushing it in. We've got traps in the back. We've got the clavicle comes up and pushes in, and rests on the top, and there should be kind of a void. I'm just making some moves in there. But I want to feel that drop back and then roll it down. Next thing is, again, so you're hitting your silhouette's pretty nice, but what's happening within the silhouettes is something that I want to investigate a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this in and then pull the shoulder out. So one thing I would recommend people start getting into is looking at cross sections. So you can just type in cross sections of the human body, and you will see some nice information. Always correcting, going back. So you can see the drawing there. Just all run through a little bit more. We're not going to be spot on. You still have the drawing for it. I think you might be a little uncomfortable. This is your Z-sphere. There's your skin. All right, so what's going to happen here is if I hit the A key and then come back, you have a good chance of losing any sculpture that you've got. What you're going to do, and you're at a high resolution, I can tell because I don't see much of the faceting. You're not crazy high, but see from the faceting down here. But if you ever find yourself in this situation, you've gone a little bit, you're like, oh, you just get happy to sculpt, and you start sculpting. Just make polymesh 3D. That'll replicate that, and now you still have your Z-sphere. And if we go in here and hit the A key, and at the Z-sphere, so the A key again. And you might lose some stuff, you might keep it. But now this is the topology, the M3D. You won't have any subdivision stuff, right? You'll be stuck at whatever resolution was there. If this is working for you, and I don't know, it seems like they might have updated it where it's not working terribly. You might still be able to work with this and then convert it. It is taking a little bit to go back. I'd be careful with that. Okay. So yeah, I think really the big thing with the character is you go down in resolution a little bit, make it a little manageable to work with. Let me see what this is. Yeah, you're already at 1.6 million polygons.
Too high, real high.
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit to work with. So bringing that down, and maybe even going down one more, you'll be able to target the shapes a little bit better. So that's cool with one a little forward. Is he 7?
No, I'm not. I did, last time she suggested you think it kind of focus on one side
Yeah.
and do symmetry.
Well, he feels a little thin. It looks like he might be jumping from side to side. So I'm going to see if we can a little bit more. We've got a center line in his nose. I'm going to try and get his movements. So let me just drop it over. And so it is crucial to do whatever you can to try and start off on the right foot, because it will, it's gonna hurt. There we go. So I'm just gonna select that, and we're gonna go horizontal also, and just see if we can't get closer, right? So, basically, it's moving a lot. So this is where you get into, I'm gonna get that in that position again, but I'm gonna try and just type in values. So let's try 0.64, just like I did on the other one. That's like a little bit too much. 0.645. A little better. Let's go. Okay. Because I can't properly gauge the thickness of the legs unless we're set. 0.646, let's try 0.647. Even better, okay? So now we can really get the shape. See the lats now. I'm using a little bit of a small brush. Thinking about how lats are formed, or how an armpit is formed, right? You've got the rib cage, you've got the pec coming over and tying onto the humerus, and then you've got the lats coming underneath and tying on the humerus. That creates a void, and then you end up with armpits. So usually from the front, if you've got the character, especially if you're standing like this, the lats are spread out, you're going to see those from the front. So you want to make sure that, one, they're coming from the back, and so now you can see that they are connected into the wrong place. But there we go. Now we've got them targeted. Okay? So I think this will help you with making a more accurate model. So the number there is 0.647 in the horizontal. That seems to be pretty spot on. There's usually always a way to get it to line up. Now, another thing, this will be the last thing that if you find that you're moving the back, or you're sculpting and you're pulling the front side through the back side or whatever, that's becoming a problem, just go to brush, auto masking, turn on back face masking. Okay? But yeah, I would bring him more on the target now that you've got a good number to run with. I think he's going down a decent direction. You can just tell that he's off character a little bit. Be careful, working really high 1.6 is too much geometry for this stage. I think I kick it down 2 subdivisions and I can start to refine it. The other thing also is make sure that you're not going to crash. So either try making it the adaptive skin now to preserve, if it will. It looks like it's working. Maybe they updated that in 2018, or it's actually functional now. Because before, you hit the A key and you went back to Z-spheres, you went back, you lose all your sculpture detail if you were sculpting on the adaptive preview. Right? This seems to be holding up so that they worked out some of the bugs there. So bring it back to character, line up your image, bring it back to character, bring down your subdivisions a little bit, and make sure that it's an actual adaptive skin. Okay? All right, well, thank you for sharing. It's going down a good road. Took those fingers. Yeah, come on. I mean, when he opens up his hand, that's the way those fingers look, right? Yeah, and he's the cheap Wolverine. Budget Wolverine. All right, so thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Keep on trudging with it. Get up the anatomy. Don't argue anatomy, especially on him. He's got anatomy that's drawn really rigid, but following some more accurate stuff. Cool? Yeah. So with that, we'll go ahead and say goodbye. We have another class coming in, so we're going to have to scoot pretty